Warsaw, September 1940. German soldiers sweep through the streets, rifles raised, shouting commands. Civilians are herded at gunpoint into a growing mass of terrified faces. A street roundup, the Nazis call it a lapanka. Nearly 2,000 Poles will be seized before the day ends. One man stands near a doorway. Behind him is his sister-in-law's apartment, a place he could hide. Safety is 3 steps away. Instead, he moves forward into the crowd, allowing himself to be taken. His name is Witold Pilecki, and he has just made a choice that defies all human instinct. He is volunteering for Auschwitz. To understand why a man would walk willingly into hell, we must first understand the world that created him. Witold Pilecki was born on the 13th of May, 1901, in a small town called Oleniec in the Russian province of Karelia. His family were Polish nobles, the Szlachta, but they lived in exile. His grandfather Józef had fought in the January Uprising of 1863, when Poles rose against Russian rule. The rebellion failed, and the Pilecki family paid the price. Their estates were confiscated. Józef was banished to the frozen edges of the Russian Empire. The family would spend decades in internal exile, but they never forgot who they were. Pilecki's mother, Ludwika, made certain of that. She taught her children Polish history and literature in secret, keeping alive the memory of a homeland they had never seen. The boy grew up steeped in stories of sacrifice and resistance, of ancestors who had given everything for Poland. It shaped him in ways that would only become clear decades later. When the Great War ended and Poland was reborn as an independent nation in 1918, Pilecki was 17 years old. He immediately joined the fight. The new Polish state faced an existential threat from Bolshevik Russia, and Pilecki enlisted in the cavalry. He saw action at the Battle of Warsaw in August 1920, when Polish forces drove back the Red Army in what became known as the Miracle on the Vistula. He was awarded the Cross of Valor twice for gallantry under fire. After the war, Pilecki settled into a quieter life. He inherited the family estate at Sukrzyce near the town of Lida in what was then eastern Poland. He became a gentleman farmer, cultivating fields and raising horses. He married a local school teacher named Maria Ostrowska on the 7th of April, 1931. Their son Andrzej was born the following year, and their daughter Zofia arrived in 1933. Pilecki was not merely a farmer. He founded a dairy cooperative to help local peasants get fair prices for their milk. He organized a volunteer fire brigade. He established a cavalry training unit called the Krakusy, preparing young men for the defense of their country. He painted, he wrote poetry. In 1938, the Polish government awarded him the Silver Cross of Merit for his service to the community. He was, by all appearances, a man who had found peace. Then, on the 1st of September 1939, German tanks rolled across the Polish border. Pilecki was called up immediately. He was given command of a reserve cavalry unit, but these were not trained soldiers. They were local men, peasants, who had never fired a gun in anger. Pilecki led them westward anyway, toward the fighting. They engaged German forces where they could, but the outcome was never in doubt. The Wehrmacht had 1,500 aircraft, 2,400 tanks, and nearly 1.5 million men. Poland had cavalry lances against panzer divisions. Within weeks, it was over. On the 17th of September, the Soviet Union invaded from the east, honoring a secret agreement with Hitler to partition Poland between them. The country that had been reborn just 20 years earlier was dismembered once again. Western Poland fell under Nazi occupation. Eastern Poland, including Pilecki's estate at Sukrzyce, was swallowed by the Soviets. By October, Pilecki had made his way to Warsaw. The Polish army had been shattered, but resistance was already taking shape in the shadows. On the 9th of November 1939, Pilecki and a fellow officer named Major Jan Wlodarkiewicz founded a secret organization called the Tajna Armia Polska, the secret Polish army. Their goal was simple: fight the occupiers by any means necessary. What Pilecki did not yet know was that the Polish underground would become the largest resistance movement in occupied Europe. Over half of all intelligence from the continent that reached London during the war would come from Polish sources. The network that Pilecki helped create would prove invaluable to the Allied cause. But in the summer of 1940, a new threat emerged, one that demanded first-hand intelligence. The Germans had established a camp near the town of Auschwitz, which they called by its German name Auschwitz. Polish political prisoners and intellectuals were being sent there in growing numbers. Families began receiving telegrams with a chilling uniformity. Your relative has died. The cause of death varied, heart failure, pneumonia, but the message was always the same. No one came back from Auschwitz. Rumors reached the underground. The camp was a place of extraordinary brutality. Prisoners were beaten, starved, worked to death. But the details were murky. The resistance needed someone inside, someone who could document what was happening and organize the prisoners for potential action. At a meeting of the secret Polish army in August 1940, Major Witold made a proposal. Someone should infiltrate Auschwitz, and he had a candidate in mind. Pilecki later believed the mission was partly meant as punishment. He had refused to swear an oath to Witold's Catholic nationalist ideology, insisting instead that the resistance welcome Poles of all backgrounds. The major had not forgotten. But whatever the motivation, Witold framed it as an invitation to volunteer, and Pilecki accepted. He was given forged identity documents in the name of Tomasz Serafiński, a tanner by trade. The real Tomasz Serafiński existed somewhere in Poland, unaware that his name was about to enter a concentration camp. Pilecki memorized the details of his new identity and prepared for what lay ahead. His mission had three objectives. First, gather intelligence on the camp and smuggle reports to the outside world. Second, organize the prisoners into a resistance network that could coordinate with the underground. Third, prepare for a possible armed liberation of the camp if the opportunity arose. What Pilecki knew was that Auschwitz was brutal. What he did not know, what no one yet understood, was that he was walking into what would become the largest murder factory in human history. On the 19th of September 1940, Pilecki positioned himself near his sister-in-law Eleonora Ostrowska's apartment on ulica Wojska Polskiego in Warsaw. A German roundup was underway. When the soldiers came, he stepped forward and allowed himself to be taken. He was 39 years old. His son Andrei was 8. His daughter Zofia was 7. He did not know if he would ever see them again. The prisoners were held for 2 days at the Light Horse Guards barracks. German guards beat them with rubber batons, establishing from the first moment who held power and who had none. On the night of the 21st of September, Pilecki and the others were loaded onto trains. The journey took hours. When the doors finally opened, they had arrived at Auschwitz. Years later, after his escape, Pilecki would meet a man named Tomasz Serafiński, the real one, who would become deputy commander of the local Home Army unit. The two men looked at each other, one having used the other's name through nearly 3 years of hell. It was one of the strange ironies that war produces, a collision of identities that neither could have predicted. But that meeting lay far in the future. On the night of September 22, 1940, there was only the platform, the shouting guards, the watchtowers, and the gates of Auschwitz closing behind him. The first thing Pilecki saw was the inscription above the gate, Arbeit macht frei, work sets you free. It was a lie, and everyone who passed beneath those words knew it. The new prisoners were marched into the camp and forced to stand at attention. SS guards moved among them, swinging clubs and rifle butts. An officer addressed them in German, his words translated by a prisoner functionary. "You are not at a sanatorium, you are at a German concentration camp. The only way out is through the chimney." He pointed toward a squat brick building with a smokestack. The crematorium was already operational. Another guard added a detail that would stay with Pilecki forever. The rations have been calculated so that you will only survive 6 weeks. The prisoners were processed. Their heads were shaved. Their clothes were taken. They were given striped uniforms and wooden clogs that did not fit. Each man received a number, tattooed or sewn onto his uniform. Pilecki became prisoner 4859. During the processing, prisoners were required to hold their identification tags in their teeth while their information was recorded. Pilecki, perhaps distracted or perhaps simply unfamiliar with the procedure, held his tag in his hand instead. A guard noticed. Without warning, he swung a heavy rod into Pilecki's face. Two of his front teeth shattered. He spat blood and enamel onto the floor. In his report, written years later, Pilecki described the moment with characteristic understatement. Since that moment, we became mere numbers. The man who entered Auschwitz as Tomasz Serafiński, who was truly Witold Pilecki, cavalry officer and resistance fighter, had been reduced to 4 digits, 4859. But Pilecki had not come to Auschwitz to be a victim. He had come to fight. Within days of his arrival, he began identifying potential allies. He looked for men he had known before the war, fellow soldiers and resistance members who had been swept up in earlier roundups. He found a few. More importantly, he found others who shared his determination to resist. The organization he built was called Związek Organizacji Wojskowej, the Union of Military Organization, known by its initials ZOW. Its structure was designed for survival in an environment where betrayal meant death. Pilecki organized the resistance into cells of 5 men each. Each cell knew nothing about the others. If the Gestapo captured one group and tortured them for information, they could only reveal 4 names. The damage would be contained. By late 1940, Pilecki had formed the first leadership circle, what he called the Top 5. Dr. Władysław Deering, prisoner 1723, provided access to the camp hospital. Lieutenant Colonel Władysław Cermacki, prisoner 2795, became the first commander of ZOW. Captain Jerzy Dewerion, prisoner 3507, handled military planning. Eugeniusz Obojski and Roman Zagner rounded out the group. One of their most valuable allies was not Polish at all. Otto Kusel, a German criminal who wore the green triangle of a common prisoner, had been assigned prisoner number 2. He had been at Auschwitz from nearly the beginning, and he controlled work assignments throughout the camp. Kusel was, as Pilecki noted, favorably disposed towards Polish prisoners. His willingness to place ZOW members in strategic positions, the kitchen, the hospital, the administrative offices, proved invaluable. Men who worked indoors lived longer than men who worked in the fields. Men who had access to extra food could share it with others. By the spring of 1942, ZOW had grown to include over 1,000 members spread across the main camp and its subcamps. They shared food and medicine. They passed news from the outside world, maintaining morale when despair seemed the only rational response. They documented everything they witnessed, preparing for the day when the world would demand an accounting. And in a feat of ingenuity that still defies belief, they built a radio. It took 7 months. Parts were smuggled into the camp piece by piece, hidden in food deliveries, concealed in the clothing of new arrivals, stolen from German storerooms. ZOW members with technical knowledge assembled the components in secret. By the autumn of 1941, they had a working shortwave transmitter. From inside Auschwitz, they began broadcasting camp conditions, death tolls, the names of SS officers responsible for atrocities. The signals reached the Polish government in exile in London. For the first time, real-time intelligence was flowing directly from inside the camp. The radio operated for approximately a year before the risk of discovery became too great. In the autumn of 1942, ZOW dismantled it, but by then, they had established other methods of communication. Released prisoners memorized reports and delivered them orally to resistance contacts. Escaped prisoners carried written documents. Civilian workers who entered the camp for construction projects were persuaded or bribed to smuggle out messages. The information that flowed from Auschwitz was detailed and horrifying, and what Pilecki documented was not merely brutality, he witnessed a transformation. When Pilecki arrived in September 1940, Auschwitz was a concentration camp, brutal and deadly, but primarily a place of imprisonment and forced labor. The prisoners were mostly Polish, political opponents and intellectuals whom the Nazis wished to destroy. Death came through starvation, exhaustion, disease, and casual murder. But it came one prisoner at a time. That changed in the autumn of 1941. In early September, the SS conducted an experiment. Approximately 600 Soviet prisoners of war and 250 sick Polish inmates were herded into the basement of Block 11. The doors were sealed. Then the Germans released a pesticide called Zyklon B into the enclosed space. The gas was hydrogen cyanide. Within minutes, everyone inside was dead. Pilecki learned of it almost immediately. The camp underground had sources everywhere. What had been a killing was now becoming a system. In January 1942, senior Nazi officials gathered at a villa in the Berlin suburb of Wannsee to formalize what they called the final solution to the Jewish question. Auschwitz was designated as a primary site for the extermination of European Jews. Construction began on a new camp at Birkenau, 3 kilometers from the main facility. Gas chambers were built. Crematoria followed. By the spring of 1942, the transports began arriving. Jews from Slovakia, Jews from France, Jews from Belgium, the Netherlands, Poland, Germany, Austria. They came by the thousands, then by the tens of thousands. Most were sent directly to the gas chambers without ever being registered as prisoners. Pilecki watched the camp transform from a place of suffering into an industrial murder operation. He documented everything. The selections on the railway platform, where SS doctors decided with a gesture who would live and who would die. The gas chambers disguised as shower rooms. The crematoria that burned day and night, their chimneys painting the sky gray with human ash. The medical experiments conducted on living prisoners. The phenol injections administered directly to the heart as a method of execution. In his report, Pilecki described the phenol killings with clinical precision. 2 butchers wrenched their arms backward, throwing out their chests forward, and Claire made a phenol injection with a long needle just in their hearts. Josef Claire was an SS orderly. He murdered thousands. Through all of this, Pilecki himself was fighting to survive. He contracted pneumonia in the first winter and nearly died. He was assigned to outdoor labor details without adequate clothing, working in temperatures that killed weaker men. He caught typhus, the disease that spread through the camp on the bodies of lice, and survived that too. He described the hunger as the hardest battle of his life. There were moments, he admitted later, when he felt capable of cutting out a piece of a dead body. The starvation was that complete. Yet he kept going. Zio kept growing. And the reports kept flowing out. In June 1942, 4 prisoners accomplished one of the most audacious escapes in the camp's history. Dressed in SS uniforms, armed with weapons stolen from a camp storeroom, they drove out the main gate in Commandant Rudolf Haas's own car, a Steyr 220. One of the escapees was Stanislaw Gustav Jaster, a ZOW member. He carried with him Pilecki's most detailed report yet. The information reached Warsaw, it reached London. It reached the British government and, eventually, the Americans. The Allies now knew what was happening at Auschwitz. They did nothing. The reports were filed. Some officials dismissed them as gross exaggerations. Others simply looked away. No bombs fell on the railway lines leading to Birkenau. No paratroopers descended to liberate the camp. The killing continued. By early 1943, the Gestapo was closing in on ZOW. Key members were being arrested and executed. Pilecki's own position grew increasingly precarious. After 947 days inside Auschwitz, he faced a choice. He could remain and almost certainly die when the SS finally identified him. Or he could escape, reach the home army in person, and make one final attempt to convince them to act. He chose to run. The escape had been months in the making. Pilecki had arranged his transfer to the camp bakery, a work detail located 2 kilometers outside the main fence. 2 trusted ZOW members, Jan Redze and Edward Siezielski, managed to get themselves assigned to the same commando. Together, they prepared. They crafted a duplicate key for the bakery's iron door. They hid civilian clothes beneath their striped uniforms. They obtained powdered tobacco to throw off the tracker dogs that would inevitably follow. They acquired cyanide tablets. If captured, they would not be taken alive. The SS had ways of making men talk, and Pilecki knew too much. The night they chose was the 26th of April, 1943, Easter Monday. The guards might be less alert during the holiday. The three men reported for their night shift at the bakery as usual. Then they waited. In the early hours of the morning, while the guards' attention was elsewhere, they moved. They cut the telephone wires that connected the bakery to the main camp. They cut the alarm wires. Pilecki inserted the duplicate key into the iron door, turned it, and slid the bolts free. The door swung open onto the darkness beyond. They slipped outside and barricaded the door behind them to delay pursuit. Then they ran. They headed east, toward the Sola River. Behind them, the bakery guards realized something was wrong. Machine gun fire erupted, muzzle flashes stabbing the night. Bullets cracked through the air. The three men kept running. They reached the Sola and crossed it. They found a boat and used it to cross the Vistula. By dawn, they had put significant distance between themselves and the camp, but they were still deep in occupied territory, still wearing prisoner uniforms beneath their civilian clothes, still hunted. For the next week, they traveled on foot, covering more than 100 kilometers. They moved mostly at night, hiding during the day. Polish civilians along the route helped them, providing food and shelter despite the mortal risk. The penalty for aiding escaped prisoners was death, but ordinary Poles helped anyway. Finally, they reached Nowy Wisnitz, a town near Bochnia where the Home Army had a presence. Pilecki made contact with the local resistance. He was safe. And there, in a twist of fate that seemed almost scripted, he met a man named Tomasz Serafiński. The real Tomasz Serafiński, whose identity documents Pilecki had carried through nearly 3 years of hell. Serafiński had become deputy commander of the local Home Army unit, unaware until that moment that his name had been inside Auschwitz. The two men faced each other, one having borrowed the other's existence to survive. What passed between them is not recorded, but one imagines a silence before the handshake. Pilecki wasted no time. In June, still in hiding near Nowy Wisnitz, he drafted his first post-escape report. He buried it at a local farm for safekeeping. It would not be discovered until after his death. By August, he had made his way back to Warsaw and begun compiling a comprehensive account of everything he had witnessed. The document would become known as Witold's Report, or Rapport W. It ran to more than 100 pages. He presented the report to Home Army Command along with a proposal: liberate Auschwitz. Pilecki laid out the plan in detail. The Allies could drop weapons and paratroopers, perhaps the Polish 1st Independent Parachute Brigade stationed in Britain. Alternatively, the Home Army could mount an assault from outside, while ZOW coordinated an uprising from within. The camp's defenses were formidable, but not impenetrable. Thousands of prisoners could be saved. The Home Army said no. The operation was deemed unfeasible. Even if an assault succeeded in breaching the camp, what then? There was no transport for the liberated prisoners. No supplies, no shelter. The Germans would counterattack with overwhelming force. The rescued inmates, many of them sick and starving, would be slaughtered in the open or recaptured within days. The Soviet Red Army was the only force with the strength to take and hold such a position, and the Soviets showed no interest in cooperation. Pilecki argued, but the decision stood. His 3 years inside Auschwitz, his 1,000-member resistance network, his painstakingly smuggled intelligence, all of it had led to this, a rejection. And the Allies were no better. Pilecki's reports had been reaching London since 1941. The Polish government in exile had forwarded them to the British, who shared them with the Americans. By 1944, the evidence of mass murder at Auschwitz was overwhelming. Additional confirmation came from Rudolf Verba and Alfred Wetzler, two Slovak Jews who escaped in April 1944 and provided detailed accounts of the gas chambers and crematoria. Their report included diagrams. It included the rate of killing. It included everything needed to understand what was happening. Winston Churchill received the information in June 1944. He was horrified. He wrote to Foreign Secretary Anthony Eden asking what can be done. The following month, he instructed his staff to get everything out of the Air Force you can and invoke me if necessary. But the military authorities refused. Bombing the camp, they argued, would divert resources from more important targets. The accuracy of high-altitude bombing was unreliable. Prisoners might be killed. The Germans might use any attack for propaganda purposes. Request denied. The bitter irony is that American bombers did strike Auschwitz. In August and September of 1944, waves of B-17 and B-24 aircraft attacked the IG Farben synthetic fuel plant at Monowitz, just 5 miles from the gas chambers at Birkenau. The prisoners heard the explosions. They watched the bombs fall. One survivor later recalled the feeling, "We were no longer afraid of death." At any rate, not of that death. Every bomb that exploded filled us with joy and gave us new confidence in life. But the bombs never fell on the crematoria. The railway lines bringing Jews from Hungary remained intact. Between May and July of 1944 alone, 438,000 Hungarian Jews were deported to Auschwitz. Most were gassed within hours of arrival. The Allies could see it happening. They had aerial photographs. They chose not to act. Pilecki, stuck in Warsaw, could only watch as his warnings went unheeded. He threw himself back into the fight. He joined a sabotage unit called Ketio, operating under yet another false name, Roman Jaziska. He was promoted to cavalry captain in February 1944. He also joined NIE, a secret organization preparing for resistance against the Soviet occupation that many Poles saw coming. Then, on the 1st of August 1944, the Warsaw Uprising began. The Home Army rose against the German occupiers, hoping to liberate the capital before the Red Army arrived. Pilecki was not assigned to the fighting, but he volunteered anyway. He joined a unit called the Warsawianka Company and initially served as a common soldier, concealing his rank. When the unit's officers were killed in the brutal street fighting, he revealed his identity and took command. He led his men at a redoubt near Starinkiewicz Square, a position the Germans never managed to capture. Meanwhile, back at Auschwitz, the resistance network Pilecki had built was still functioning. In October 1944, members of the Sonderkommando, the Jewish prisoners forced to work in the gas chambers and crematoria, launched an uprising. They had obtained explosives with help from the camp underground, smuggled to them by women working in a nearby munitions factory. On the 7th of October, they attacked. They killed 3 SS guards. They blew up Crematorium 4, damaging it beyond repair. The revolt was crushed. 450 prisoners died in the fighting and subsequent executions. 4 of the women who had smuggled the explosives were hanged in January 1945, just 3 weeks before the camp was liberated. One of them, Rosa Robota, shouted her final words to the assembled prisoners as the trapdoor dropped, "Be strong and be brave." The Warsaw Uprising also failed. After 63 days of fighting, the Home Army surrendered. Pilecki was captured by the Germans, but this time as a prisoner of war under his real name. He was sent to a camp at Murnau in Bavaria, where younger prisoners called him Daddy because of the way he looked after them. He remained there until American forces liberated the camp in April 1945. The war was over. Pilecki had survived Auschwitz. He had survived the Warsaw Uprising. He had survived German captivity. He was free. But Poland was not. Pilecki made his way to Italy and joined the Polish Second Corps under General Władysław Anders. He compiled the final, comprehensive version of Witold's report. He could have stayed in the West, safe from the Soviet-backed regime taking control of his homeland. Many Poles did exactly that, knowing what awaited them if they returned. Pilecki chose differently. General Anders asked for volunteers to return to Poland undercover, to gather intelligence on the communist government and maintain contact with the resistance. Pilecki raised his hand. He knew the danger. He told colleagues that he might be killed. He went anyway. In late 1945, traveling under the name Roman Jazierski, Witold Pilecki crossed back into Poland. For 2 years, he operated in the shadows, reconnecting with former Home Army members, documenting the Soviet occupation, sending reports to the government in exile in London. Then, on the 8th of May 1947, the Communist secret police found him. The arrest was swift and professional. Agents of the Ministry of Public Security, the Communist secret police, had been watching Pilecki for months. On the 8th of May 1947, they closed the trap. 23 people were taken in the sweep, members of an intelligence network that had been feeding information to the Polish government in exile in London. 7 were eventually released. Pilecki was not among them. He was brought to Mokotów prison on Rakowecka Street in Warsaw, a grim facility that had become the primary detention center for enemies of the new regime. He was placed in the 10th Pavilion, reserved for the most sensitive political cases. The man who had built a resistance network inside Auschwitz was now a prisoner of his own countrymen. The interrogations began immediately. The communists wanted names. They wanted to know everyone Pilecki had worked with, everyone he had contacted, every detail of his intelligence network. They wanted him to confess to crimes against the Polish state, to admit that he was a spy for Western imperialism, a saboteur, a would-be assassin. They had methods for extracting such confessions. The torture lasted months. Pilecki's interrogators broke both of his collarbones. They snapped his wrists. They applied electric shocks. They deprived him of sleep for days at a time, then woke him for more questioning whenever he finally collapsed. They beat him. They threatened him. They broke his body in ways that Auschwitz never had. Pilecki gave them almost nothing. He signed some documents, he admitted later, not reading them since I was very tired at the time. But he did not betray his network. The names of his co-conspirators remained locked in his shattered body. The man who had endured 947 days in a Nazi death camp proved unbreakable by Polish communists. During one of the rare visits his wife Maria was permitted, Pilecki told her something that revealed the true nature of his suffering. Compared with them, he said, Auschwitz was just a trifle. The words require a moment to absorb. This was a man who had watched the Holocaust unfold from the inside, who had survived starvation and typhus and pneumonia, who had seen thousands march to the gas chambers. He was saying that what the communists did to him was worse. The show trial began on the 3rd of March, 1948, at the Warsaw District Provincial Court on Nowowiska Street. The proceedings were closed to the public on grounds of state security. No outside observers were permitted. No journalists were allowed to report freely on what transpired. Lieutenant Colonel Jan Herkowian presided. Major Czesław Lipinski served as prosecutor. The charges were extensive: illegal border crossings, use of forged documents, failure to enlist in the military, possession of illegal firearms, espionage on behalf of General Władysław Anders and the Polish government in exile, espionage for foreign imperialism, meaning Britain and the United States, and plots to assassinate officials of the Ministry of Public Security. Pilecki denied the assassination charges. He denied that his intelligence work constituted espionage against Poland. He had been reporting to the legitimate Polish government, he argued, the one that had fought the Nazis, the one that still existed in London. He still considered himself their officer. He pleaded guilty to the lesser charges, the border crossings and false documents, because those were simply facts. He was not permitted to present a full defense. No witnesses were called on his behalf. The verdict had been determined before the trial began. One figure haunts this proceeding above all others. Józef Sienkiewicz was Prime Minister of Poland in 1948. He was also a former prisoner of Auschwitz. He had been there at the same time as Pilecki. He knew what Pilecki had done, the resistance he had built, the reports he had smuggled out, the lives he had saved. When the question of clemency arose, Sienkiewicz could have intervened. He could have spoken for a man who had shared the same hell. Instead, Sienkiewicz recommended that Pilecki be treated harshly, as an enemy of the state. The fellow survivor condemned him. On the 15th of May 1948, Witold Pilecki was sentenced to death. He wrote a letter to Bolesław Bierut, the communist leader of Poland, appealing for clemency. The first sentence read, All my life I have worked for Poland. The appeal was denied. On the evening of the 25th of May, 1948, at approximately 9:30, Pilecki was led to an execution site within Mokotu prison. The method was standard for the regime, a single shot to the back of the head. The executioner was a man named Piotr Śmietański, who would carry out many such killings for the communist state. Pilecki's last words vary depending on the account. Some say he declared, "I have been trying to live my life so that in the hour of my death I would rather feel joy than fear." Others report that he simply said, "Long live free Poland." He was 47 years old. His body was never returned to his family. The location of his grave remains unknown to this day. He is believed to be buried somewhere in the Lachka section of Puławski Cemetery in Warsaw, near the prison wall, in an unmarked mass grave with other victims of communist executions. Despite years of searching by the Institute of National Remembrance, his remains have never been positively identified. The regime that killed him also stole his grave. For Maria Pilecki, the ordeal was only beginning. She was now the widow of a convicted traitor, an enemy of the state. No one would hire her. She found work as a tea maker, a cleaner, whatever menial jobs she could get. She often held multiple positions at once, scraping together enough to survive, to feed her children, to keep a roof over their heads. She would live another 54 years, dying on the 6th of February 2002 at the age of 96. For 42 of those years, she was officially the widow of a criminal. Her son Andrzej was 16 when his father was executed. He heard about the trial on the school radio, listening as the announcer described his father as a traitor and enemy of the people. He was barred from higher education because of his parentage. He struggled to find work. The sins of the father were visited upon the son. Her daughter Zofia was 15. She tried to continue her education, enrolling at the Faculty of Civil Engineering at Warsaw University of Technology. She was called in for questioning, harassed about her father, reminded constantly of her shameful origins. Eventually, she received a message that the university could not tolerate the studies of the daughter of a traitor to the Polish nation. She was expelled. Like her brother, she spent years struggling to find employment. Any employer willing to hire the child of an enemy of the state. Both children would later say that their entire lives were shaped by that moment in 1948. They grew up knowing their father only as a criminal, hearing his name spoken with contempt, watching their mother work herself to exhaustion just to keep the family alive. And the truth remained buried. For 41 years, Witold Pilecki was erased from Polish history. His name could not be published. His reports from Auschwitz were hidden away, inconvenient documents that contradicted the Soviet narrative of liberation. The camp had been freed by the Red Army, the official story went, and Polish resistance played no significant role. The man who had volunteered to enter hell, who had built a network of nearly 1,000 prisoners, who had sent the first detailed reports of the Holocaust to the outside world, simply did not exist. The first significant account of his story in English appeared in 1975 in a book called Fighting Auschwitz by Józef Garlinski. Garlinski was himself a former Auschwitz prisoner who had emigrated to Britain. He knew the truth, and he told it. But his book reached a limited audience. The full story remained largely unknown. It would take the fall of communism itself to bring Witold Pilecki back from the dead. In 1989, the Iron Curtain fell. Poland held free elections, and the truth about Witold Pilecki began to emerge. On the 1st of October 1990, the Supreme Court of Poland fully rehabilitated him, annulling all charges and declaring his execution a judicial murder. In 2006, he received the Order of the White Eagle, Poland's highest honor. In 2013, he was posthumously promoted to colonel. His children, Andrzej and Zofia, who had spent their lives as the son and daughter of a traitor, finally learned what their father truly was. They dedicated their remaining years to preserving his memory. Chief Rabbi Michael Shudrick of Poland said of Pilecki, When God created the human being, God had in mind that we should all be like Captain Witold Pilecki. He walked into Auschwitz by choice. He warned the world. The world did not listen. He survived, and his own country killed him for it. Some truths take decades to be heard. This was one of them.